Welcome to the concluding part of Ambassador Babagana Kingibe's recorded recollection of the June 12 story. Taking off from perception of the capacity of the Abacha government, we bring you the untold story of June 12.
Let me put it that that was an option. I didn't exercise it. There were many factors, many circumstances. Even the examples of interventions I made, I could do because I was there. I realized that there are bits and pieces of interventions one could make. Because it was me. If it was somebody else, they couldn't even take these steps. It was worth to be within and see what one could do. But to be candid with you, it's also easier said than done. There are cultural issues, there are cultural reasons. There was also, naive as I was, the start of a new political program, transition program, and so on. So things would come to an end anyway. So one stayed on to do what one could. No, some of the characterizations made of him are so far from the truth. General Abacha was a thorough person, very strategic person, a person who had an eye on details, an elephantine memory, great power of recall. And in council meetings and so on, he followed the discussions, drew an idea of the consensus, and went by it. I think his main concern, frankly, in governance was regime maintenance, because from day one, you know, he had this anti-June 12 protests. He had this barracking by the international community. Remember the oil price at the time. So he had internal security challenges and so on. And his focus on regime maintenance, not in terms of how his ministers worked or didn't work. I believe that any discomfort I had would have been more in terms of, oh, look, you know, there is no definite movement towards the restoration of democracy. And this may well be a military regime in perpetuity. I took steps to distance myself, publicly even, many public events organized. All these Youth Yearn and all the self-succession programs and so on. I didn't participate. There was a small caucus that were working out the political program. I was asked to come for a meeting. I went once. I saw the direction in which they were going, and I never attended again. It was obvious by my body language and by my absence from the scene that, and my concentrating in delivering what I decided were the key things to do in the foreign ministry. Clearly, it was an impossible task to sell the government. So I concentrated on capacity building in the ministry, in institutional reforms in the ministry for a future date. In the Ministry of Internal Affairs, I concentrated on prison reforms, on more humane treatment of detainees and prisoners, and in securing our borders and in empowering the paramilitary organizations like the civil defense, immigration, prison service, and so on. I concentrated in areas which would impact the services and the organizations by instituting reforms and so on. But general policy and so on, I distanced myself. But there was really no, certainly the perception of General Abacha himself, you know, I think is largely off the mark, given the situation he faced. And given, obviously, later on, the ambition he had to continue in office for longer than people wished or anticipated. Regarding the incarceration of the attempted coup of General Obasanjo, in which General Yaradua and others were implicated. Again, I was not a member of the Provisional Ruling Council. I wasn't part of any of those decisions. The only intervention I could make was to privately appeal for a different outcome. But they were found guilty, and again, they were sent, the prison service was asked to look after, to take care of them. Now, they communicated directly with the Controller General of Prison, who then, as his minister came and told me that, look, he had this instruction. The only intervention I made was, I said, look, tell me which are your best prisons in this country. He said, Jos and Port Harcourt. I said, please send General Obasanjo to one of them and General Yaradua to the other, and make sure that they have the best treatment possible, that their families should have access to them, they should have the food of their choice, and all sorts of conditions consistent with the offices they held. That's all. Now, when General Abacha's office understood that General Obasanjo and General Yaradua were not suffering, were not going through hardship, they didn't even talk to us. They took direct charge of them. Their custody was no longer a responsibility of the prison service. Major Al-Mustafa took direct charge, and they had them transferred to Yola and in the east, Abakaliki. And they were really harassed. We had no involvement, we had no responsibility. But even then, I did, and bless his soul, if he was around, somebody like late President Yaradua, the junior president, the junior brother of General Yaradua would have confirmed that I did everything possible to make life as easy and comfortable as possible. Late Stella Obasanjo, every time she was going to Yola to visit her husband, would pass by my house, ask for food, would give her money, and make sure that her husband, to the best, in the best possible way, his conditions were ameliorated. I was aware that people like Alhaji Ahmed Joda, people like Dr. Mahmoud Tukur, were sending him foodstuffs. They were attending to his needs, and I encouraged it. So many other examples of the kind of ameliorating interventions I could make within the limits of my powers and capacity. Oh, many mistakes we made. Of course, misreading the transition program, misreading the dynamics of the military, especially those with their own ambitions to be president and so on. Misreading, not foreseeing the annulment, and that the annulment having taken place, Chief Abiola in particular believing that he could persuade General Babangida to reverse, welcoming General Abacha, taking him at face value when he says short tenure and there'll be a return to democracy and so on. Many, many mistakes. His flight to abandon, basically, the struggle just because he was misled by the security agencies. His reliance on personal structures rather than the party structures, and so on. In my case, I guess because I had my own views, I had my own take, I didn't just put them aside and say, okay, I'll follow whatever Chief Abiola said or did, right or wrong, I believe or I didn't. I didn't adopt that attitude. Poof, I don't know what difference I would have made if I did. What difference it would have made to the outcome. We made many strategic, tactical, and judgmental mistakes, far too numerous to enumerate. We are human beings. Unfortunately, as he was about to die, I was in my house. In fact, I received his wives, Doyne and BC, and his daughter. They were visiting me because I had arranged, because I'd been working all along, for them to have access to Chief Abiola. And finally, General Abdusalami Abubakar called me and said, okay, you have it your way, let them come and see him. So they had come spend the night in my house. And they were going to go back to Lagos. They had seen him the previous night. And they had very long conversations, and they were all happy. And they were going back to Lagos when General Abdusalam Abubakar phoned me to say, where was I? I was at home. Come. So I went. By then I was not in government. I was a private person. And he told me that Chief Abiola had been taken to the clinic in a bad shape. So I called my house and told my wife to stop the wives and the daughter going back. I'd get back to them. So I went to the State House Clinic, and he was taking his last breath. So I then went back to the house and told the family to follow me to the head of state. Meanwhile, I had told General Abdusalam Abubakar that he should tell them himself what happened. So he left the office, went to the house, and I went with the family, and they broke the news to them. Anyway, that was the last time I saw. Hindsight always gives you 20/20 vision. We did what we did then, given all the information and circumstances that we had. Today, God bless him, Chief Abiola is at peace. I'm alive, but I'm wiser and more knowledgeable, hopefully. Even if you want to be uncharitable, more foolish and less knowledgeable, whatever my condition today and circumstances today are different from what they were then. Um, I think I wouldn't second guess what I would have done differently.
How do you feel? Because when I ask people, Elijah Kingibe, and the whole election thing, the thought, the feeling out there, because you never talk about these things, it's so different. How do you feel when you hear those reactions that you were basically a traitor to the cause?
Yeah. I am the type of person who doesn't jump to defend one's own action or inaction. If people make judgment about me personally, that's their judgment. I know my facts. And I would rather that others who know the facts, contrary to whatever aspersions that are cast on me, to come up and say the truth. I appreciate somebody like Barrister Shola Filani. I read once or twice in the newspapers him coming strongly to refute some malicious things being written or said about me and putting the record straight. I remember somebody like Tokumbo Afikuyomi correcting people about facts. I told you about the meeting in Chief Abiola's house where the decision was made that we should cooperate with Abacha. Nobody came out, to say, look, this was a collective decision. I really, it doesn't, me, I'm more concerned about being able to live with my conscience, being able to look at my face in the mirror in the morning and feel comfortable about myself. Quite frankly, I do not require you to think me to be a saint or to think the world of me or whatever. Is nice, is happy, is a nice thing. Everybody wishes. But if you don't feel like also, it doesn't diminish me in my own eyes and in my own mind and knowledge of the facts. And I also know that's in the tradition of Nigerian so-called journalism, especially in those days. And it's part of the culture. One doesn't want to stereotype, but it's part of the culture of those journalists who are writing such things about me, to just tell the lie, tell it so often and so regularly in the hope that it will become a truth. Unfortunately, in most cases, the inventors of the lie end up being the victims of the lie because they end up believing the lie. And those other people whom they wish to believe the lie see through the lie. And I'm comforted by the fact that I think people over time, certainly some aspects of the lie, they have come to realize, is part of the fabrication. And I hope in the fullness of time, the full truth about everything will come out. I've tried to tell you the truth as it is. I'm on record. I've mentioned witnesses. Let them contradict me. I doubt it.
And that concludes this special program of reflections in which we brought you Ambassador Babagana Kingibe's recollection of the June 12 saga as recorded by him and made available to the NTA. Goodbye.